Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the World Food Forum Youth Assembly Global Youth Action Plan launch. Whether you're joining us here in person at the Sheikh Zayed Centre or tuning in online from around the world, we are thrilled to have you here today. My name is David Giles, and I'll be co-moderating this session with the incredible Ana Aviles. Together, we will guide you through this engaging and impactful morning.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to welcome such a diverse, passionate group of young leaders, change makers, and allies, all united by a common goal: to change our agri-food systems. Today is the culmination of years of hard work from the Youth Policy Board's 6 regional teams, each of whom has dedicated time and effort to identify and address the unique challenges their regions are facing. Through consultations, surveys, virtual and hybrid youth assemblies, roundtable discussions, and collective vision, they've developed the Global Youth Action Plan.
Exactly, Anna. And today's work is not just about addressing local issues. It's about creating solutions that can ripple across the globe, ensuring our agri-food systems are as resilient, inclusive, and equitable as can be. This session is your chance to dive deeper into their work, learn about the Youth Policy Board's journey, and explore upcoming opportunities to get involved. It's clear that young people are not just participants, but are leaders in creating sustainable, innovative solutions to the challenges we face, all working towards good food for all, for today and tomorrow. So now, Anna, shall we move to the heart of today's session?
Absolutely, David. I'm personally very excited to hear the presentation of the different regional youth action plans. I've had the pleasure over the past 2 years to see each of our 6 regional teams hard at work, identifying key challenges in their respective areas and designing pilot initiatives and action items that address both local and regional needs. These plans represent 2 years of consultations, roundtables, surveys, and collaborations with different stakeholders, all with the aim of making a tangible impact.
So, how we're going to do this is that each regional team will present their youth action plan, giving us a glimpse into the policy priorities that they have selected, the gaps they've identified, and the actions that they are hoping to take in 2025 to 2026 to help address those gaps. We encourage you all to listen carefully and think about how these innovative ideas could apply in your own regions and even globally.
Exactly, and don't forget, following these presentations, we'll have an interactive reaction panel, so keep those questions and ideas coming. Without further delay, allow me to introduce 6 of our regional Youth Policy Board members. First, we have Sarah Kate Smith, representing North America, Mohammed Makjoub, representing Near East and North Africa, Chamora McNee, representing Latin America and the Caribbean, George Platt, representing Europe and Central Asia, Yuhan Seng, representing Asia and the Pacific, and Mdilim Nguni, representing the Africa region. Over to you, Andy.
Good morning. It's an honor to represent the Youth Policy Board's Africa region. Our journey began with extensive collaboration. We conducted a survey and held 2 regional assemblies, gathering feedback from, sorry, I cannot see the teleprompter, I'm sorry. Can we increase the font a little bit? Sorry, guys. Okay, I should go here? Perfect. Thank you so much. So we conducted a survey and held 2 regional assemblies, gathering feedback from youth, smallholders, indigenous peoples, women across Africa. But we didn't stop there. We conducted We consulted with senior leaders, parliamentarians, and other stakeholders to ensure that the plan is as comprehensive and inclusive as possible. One of our core principles was to build on the work of the previous board, ensuring continuity and not starting from zero. We are aware that there are still gaps, which were brought up in the different consultations that we had, and we haven't fully addressed those in this particular iteration of the plan. However, we have made the strategic decision to focus on a few key priorities to ensure we execute them rather than spreading ourselves too thin and risking failure. At the heart of this process is action. Action that we believe will set future boards up for success to continue building on our achievements. Partnership is really at the core of our strategy. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We believe that working with existing organizations and initiatives, we can maximize our impact. If you or your organization would like to partner with us, or if you by any chance know others that can help us bring this to life, we invite you to reach out to us. Please also expect us to be knocking at your doors as we seek partnerships for bringing these to life. Now, I would like to highlight the key actionable items from our plan. 1, capacity development for digital technologies and traditional knowledge. Our goal is to provide free capacity building opportunities for smallholder farmers, indigenous peoples, women, youth across Africa. We will collaborate with institutions to deliver demonstration programs on agricultural technologies. We will partner with existing digital platforms to improve access and education on digital marketing and e-commerce across Africa. We also hope to amplify youth networks, organizing virtual intergenerational dialogues, facilitating peer learning initiatives. The expected impact includes empowering participants with hands-on digital skills, enabling them to optimize their agricultural experiences and make informed business decisions. The second point is advocacy for inclusive policies and support in agri-food systems transformation. We seek to engage young leaders and policymakers in shaping the inclusive policies for smallholders, indigenous peoples, women, and youth. This will be done by partnering with advocacy programs to promote dialogue between youth leaders and policymakers, as well as local governments to integrate smallholders into the larger supply chains, offering workshops on policy negotiation, collaborating with NGOs and other financial management workshops, and offering financial management workshops tailored to the agricultural sector. The expected outcome of this second deliverable is a prioritization of digital transformation in agri-food systems and the development of inclusive agri-food policies. In conclusion, we've always advocated for youth involvement in these processes. Although there's room for growth, we are committed to using the seat we've earned at the table to show why more youth should be involved. By implementing the plan successfully, we aim to demonstrate the immense value youth-led action brings to agri-food systems. Thank you, and look forward to working with many of you to bring these initiatives to life.
Yes, and in the Asian Pacific region, we have been working to address one of the most pressing issues that we face, food security and sustainable agriculture. The Asian Pacific region is home to half of the world's malnourished population, with 5.5 million more people facing food insecurity than just a few years ago. This has been driven by factors like COVID-19 and climate change. The rising cost of the housing diet, over-reliance on processed unprocessed food and also inadequate investment in the food system are depending on the inequalities in food production and accessibility. However, from the consultations with the youth across the region, including indigenous community and young farmers, we have identified clear pathways to address these challenges. So our policy priority is to invest in and promote the productions, accessibility, and consumption of safe, healthy, and sustainable food by educating stakeholders, offering capacity development tools, and enhance their understanding of the interconnected challenges within the agri-food systems. So our action plan items, and it's to achieve this, we outline 2 action items. The first one, of course, is education and awareness on the better nutrition for food labeling literacy. So we aim to educate communities on understanding food labels and making healthier choices. By conducting workshops and advocacy campaigns, we can raise awareness about the importance of nutrition and sustainable consumption. And collaboration with the local organizations and indigenous groups will be key in making this knowledge accessible and locally relevant. We will also work closely with policymakers and standardize the food labeling, ensuring the transparency about nutritional values and environmental impact and sourcing. So the capacity development for sustainable food production policy and practice is our second action item. We want to facilitate the development of training programs focused on sustainable food productions by connecting young farmers, indigenous practitioners, and educators. We can foster knowledge sharing environment where youth can learn from each other and from experienced professional. We will collaborate with educational institutions to integrate sustainability concept into curricular promotion, interdisciplinary research, and providing young leaders with the tools that they can innovate in the space. So the expected impact will be threefolded. Through these actions, we aim to firstly increase the young's literacy on the nutrition and food labeling, and to have a greater community engagement in safe, healthy, and sustainable food consumption practice. And second, enhance youth advocacy for transparent labeling policies and locally relevant food consumption. And last but not least, by investing in youth and empowering them with knowledge, resources, and platform. And we believe that we can drive meaningful changes towards healthier, more sustainable, and equitable food access and food system in the Asian Pacific region. Thank you.
Yes, and in the Europe and Central Asia region, we've been working on increasing youth involvement across various fields and positions within the supply chain by fostering local collaborations. These efforts will focus on reducing food loss and waste throughout the supply chain, whilst also promoting rural development initiatives. We on the Youth Policy Board have the hugely complex task of having to account for over 50 countries, over 300 languages, and countless cultural heritages in formulating our policy priorities for Europe and Central Asia. And being here in Rome and listening to everyone in person, we now see that we haven't listened as well as we could have before to each of you. We realize that the issues that may affect Western Europe don't often reflect those of our friends in Central Asia or in indigenous and Arctic contexts. And we realize that we can't do all of this ourselves. We're the Youth Policy Board, but a Youth Delivery Board? That is each one of us here. So here's the plan. We still aim to encourage the 5 national chapters of the World Food Forum in Western Europe to advocate for more food loss training. But we're also more interested than ever before to reorientate ourselves to creating those spaces for indigenous youth to air their priorities and solutions and receive joint backing from both youth contexts. And that's why we're committed to co-designing a space for indigenous perspectives and those of historic Arctic people groups in Europe and Central Asia towards the development of their food priorities. This will look like the formation of an indigenous, non-indigenous joint youth council featuring regular consultations, advisory functions, and joint action statements. And this will let the specific concerns of indigenous youth in Europe and Central Asia have the backing from both their own contexts and from majority world youth leaders in the World Food Forum. Secondly, we also want to turn our attention to Central Asia, where food loss is seen as a lower priority issue compared to the more fundamental challenges of rural development and the loss of young people from agricultural contexts. So we're going to work with the FAO regional and liaison offices and national chapters to develop a rural champions scheme in the Central Asian context. Raising up a generation of hometown heroes and brain drain busters is going to be key to making sure that rural youth are no longer seen as a forgotten and discarded generation, but instead will be seen as ambassadors and champions of rural communities for a watching world. And finally, we note that we only have one World Food Forum national chapter in Central Asia, and we're delighted that Uzbekistan has sent such a strong delegation to the World Food Forum this year. They also have the amazing honor of hosting the 43rd UNESCO General Conference next year in Samarkand, the first time in 40 years that the UNESCO General Conference will be held outside of the headquarters in Paris. So we hope to keep working with the national chapter in Uzbekistan and our sister organization UNESCO to help co-design a session of rural youth culture and issues during the 14th UNESCO Youth Forum to be held in Samarkand next year. My time as a World Food Forum Youth Policy Board member has been more amazing than I could ever have imagined. And now we're so excited to help turn all of your regional priorities into regional actions. So we invite you all to enter into the kitchen with us in the year ahead, cook up those lasting partnerships, and serve the youth of the world who are hungry to write the next stories of their communities that will be told for generations to come. Thank you.
Yes, and in the Latin America and the Caribbean region, we have been working on supporting the dissemination of knowledge on finance, credit, funding to diverse right holders while preserving and acknowledging and sharing indigenous knowledge to support agroecology and local and nature-based solutions for the conservation of biological diversity and climate change mitigation. The Latin America and the Caribbean region is among the world's most biodiverse areas, boasting a rich agricultural heritage shaped by its indigenous people. Its diverse ecosystems illustrate the region's ecological and agricultural wealth, as well as the cultural richness of its communities. Therefore, it was important for this diversity, indigenous knowledge, and the active role of youth in preserving these traditions were also highlighted in our Global Youth Action Plan. The World Food Forum Youth Policy Board for the Latin America and the Caribbean has held multiple consultations with key stakeholders such as experts, Global Indigenous Youth Caucus, youth farmers, parliamentarians, the RLC Youth Working Group, national chapters, and among other Latin American and Caribbean youth. Our past two regional assemblies held in the months of July and September, along with these consultations and a stakeholder survey, has helped shape the following policy priority: support the dissemination of knowledge on finance, credit, and funding to diverse rights holders while preserving, acknowledging, and sharing indigenous knowledge to support agroecology, local and nature-based solutions for the conservation of biological diversity and climate change mitigation. From these consultations, we identified some key gaps. 1, rural and indigenous youth struggle to access flexible financing. 2, the loss of biodiversity and ancestral knowledge is affecting agricultural practices. 3, unsustainable farming practices are degrading soil and water and ecosystem services. 4, youth lack access to agricultural market, information, and opportunities. 5, agriculture is still seen as an unattractive career to young people. And lastly, there's a lack of institutional support and political will, and strengthening intergenerational knowledge sharing is crucial. Therefore, to address these gaps, we have identified the following actionable items, orienting each to a specific stakeholder group. The first actionable item, promote mechanisms to improve access to finance, seeks to provide finance information by developing a financial literacy capacity program using a training of trainers approach and culturally appropriate communication materials for young people in the agri-food systems to facilitate access to various sources of financing. We also seek to enhance access to financing by advocating for incentive programs through a recently developed pilot initiative roadmap to support youth-driven agri-ecological projects, and by sharing the findings of the roadmap with governments, the private sector, civil society, to enhance access to financing in the region using a multi-pronged approach. Our second actionable item, multi-stakeholder partnerships and intergenerational knowledge sharing for sustainable agri-food system, seeks to launch an awareness campaign on the importance of nature-based solutions, ancestral knowledge, and agroecology, sharing stories from across the region, and also organizing an intergenerational dialogue where indigenous and traditional communities share their ancestral knowledge with youth through storytelling sessions. The Latin America and the Caribbean is rich in knowledge. Our indigenous peoples, youth, communities have been stewards of the land, preserving agricultural heritage and biodiversity for generations. We are empowered with the wisdom, skills, and innovative solutions needed to tackle the challenges of climate change and sustain our agri-food systems. What we need now is support and resources to scale these solutions. The knowledge exists. The capacity is here. What is missing is the investment and access to financing that would enable us to turn this potential into real, lasting impact. We call on the governments, the financial institutions, and the partners through our roadmap to provide the resources that will match our vision and amplify the work we are already doing. We are ready, and all we need are the means to make it happen. Thank you.
Yes, and in the Near East and North Africa region, our focus is on empowering youth to shape future and sustainable agriculture and food system in our region. After extensive consultation throughout the year, we have identified our main policy priority is improving life and work conditions for rural people, especially social minorities in agri-food systems, by providing social protection and promoting environmentally and socially friendly practices. To achieve this, we have developed two main actionable items. The first one is collaborative platform for agricultural innovation for young farmers. This platform will foster knowledge sharing throughout an online network and also establishing innovation hubs in partnership with local institutions and providing seed support initiative for young farmers. We expect this to develop locally adapted solutions and improve adoption of sustainable farming practices. The second actionable item will be accessible education for sustainable agriculture. And for this, we are creating two course series. Sustainable agriculture training is to addressing women's farmers' needs, sustainable farming techniques, and business skills. The second one will be water management and resilience training, covering water-saving techniques and advocacy skills. These courses will be offered in multiple languages to ensure accessibility across all the NINO region. Our implementation spanned 18 months, starting from the last quarter of 2024, and will begin with consultation and partnership and move through the platform and curriculum development and culminate with launch of our full range of initiatives and courses. It's important that we are heavily relying on national chapters to implement these. Currently, we have active chapters in Qatar, Egypt, and Mauritania. And the good news is that we will have more national chapters to come for the next year. This expansion will significantly boost our reach and our impact. In conclusion, these actionable items address critical needs in our region's agri-food systems. By focusing on innovation, education, and collaboration through a growing network of national chapters, we aim to transform agriculture sector and ensure food security for all. We're excited about the potential of our expanding network and the positive change we can bring to the NINO region. Thank you.
Yes, and finally, it is an honor to be here to represent the North America region and to present our Global Action Plan. This plan is really founded on the work from the past year, looking at school food and education, but reflecting the shifts within our region around policy that addresses those challenges. As we consulted and met with different organizations and groups and youth from across our region, we really started to see the priority around developing an improved circular economy emerge. And as we dug a bit deeper onto what we could really achieve within that, the topic of food waste continued to arise. As we kind of expanded what we wanted to tackle as a youth policy board, we knew that we needed to keep it pragmatic and realistic in what we could achieve, but we also wanted to address what was the gap in education or awareness within our region. And so through our consultations, as we dove deeper onto the topic of food waste, we really started to notice that when youth in our region were talking about food waste, they were really only talking about food redistribution. And we knew that that's only one small piece of the puzzle within the food waste hierarchy to address the pressing need of meeting our sustainability targets when it comes to food waste management and also ensuring access and equity around food. And so we really wanted to dive in on how do we properly share and convene the experts in the nutrition guidance and the real speakers around these spaces in the food waste hierarchy when it comes to food repurposing, food redistribution, as well as food recycling. And throughout the consultations, we found that within the post-secondary institutional space, there was a lot of opportunity to really shape these conversations and build on the action that's already happening in those areas. What we really want to acknowledge with our priority area is that we're not just looking at post-secondary institutions as the only place where solutions can happen. We're looking at them as the place to be a conduit to broader food waste solutions that can really be scaled and made more accessible for community-level interventions and to support the access to food waste solutions for those beyond those institutional bubbles. And so we're really trying to leverage those as the space where we can open dialogue and push for innovation and research, and then be able to make that more accessible through our global action plan. So our first key priority is really developing a panel series that allows for youth across our region to have access to speakers, experts, youth doing work in this space, and to get a better understanding of the other aspects of the food waste hierarchy that are going to be crucial to addressing our sustainability and our food system goals. Going into January of 2025, we'll be starting with 3 panel series looking at each of these levels, not the full levels of the food waste hierarchy, but the ones that we felt youth would benefit the most from starting with and learning from. And I also want to note that this is specifically about food waste. We have not expanded yet to food loss, but that's something that we're looking at going into the future. And so when we're really bringing together and convening these opportunities for youth to learn and hear from experts and understand the ideas and approaches that they can then take home and replicate in their institutions or in their communities, we wanted to ensure that they also had something tangible to take away. And so in accompanying each of these panel series, we'll also be developing resource guides that work to collate the resources that exist within our region from valuable speakers, lived experience from the institutions we have from our national chapter in the US, and we're hoping to see some expansion into Canada as well, and also to really be able to make that accessible for youth across our region. And then this ties really clearly into our next goal. So as we said, everything came from consultation and what we were hearing in the region. And our second action item actually really stems from a conversation that happened here at World Food Forum a year ago. And it really was the engagement of the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus coming and speaking to members of our region about how we can better partner to ensure Indigenous voices are not just represented, but actively engaged in every step of the work that we're doing. And so that conversation continued, and we're very pleased to be able to include the addition of an Indigenous Advisory Circle into our Global Action Plan. This is something that will be co-created with the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus and something that we hope can be a long-term partnership that we work on together to ensure that they are active participants and our partners in the work that we're doing to make sure it reflects the needs of everyone's community. And so part of this, trying to really drive some tangible action, is as we look to our action item 1, we want to ensure that there's the opportunity for Indigenous perspectives and an Indigenous-led resource guide to be developed if that's a priority, in order to ensure that we're meeting those needs of all communities and voices, to ensure that it's being tailored in a way that makes sense and can share traditional knowledge. And so really what we're hoping to do is use this as a model where in the co-creation stage right now, and we're very excited to continue the discussions to figure out what this will look like when it comes to frequency, engagement, and how we can ensure that we're both showing up in a way that makes sense for everyone. But we also want to use this as a model to hopefully expand to whether the other regions of the YPB will engage, or if there's something we can do to continue to elevate these important voices. And so we're very excited to be able to work collaboratively, to continue to dive deeper into the needs of our region, and to really kind of collate and provide accessible resources around that food waste hierarchy to really hopefully instill change within our institutions, but also beyond in communities across Canada and the US. So thank you. And over to Anna.
Thank you all. That was definitely very, very inspiring. It has been incredible to see for the past 2 years all the work our Youth Policy Board has put into being able to build this action plan, and it's incredible to finally see starting to come into action, and I'm very excited to see it come into action over the next 2 years. Isn't that right, David?
Absolutely. Can we get another round of applause for our Youth Policy Board, please? And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Deputy Director General Beth Bechtold to the stage for her remarks. Over to you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Apologies to everyone. This is not actually my specific position on the scheduled program, but given a bit of our late start and the fact that some of us are bouncing like ping pong balls these days from so many of the different events, and with today's closing, I'm very grateful that you've let me come in here ahead of our distinguished panel for their reflections to say a little bit. And I know I'm really appreciative that the closing comments are there on the teleprompter, but I'm going off script, which is oftentimes the thing that I like to do when I've had the distinct pleasure of getting to actually hear the presentations and the comments from these 6 really impressive young people who have led us through some really, I think, very inspiring, some very specific, and also some very timely and much needed areas of opportunity for us to really get young people fully and completely engaged in this broader work that we are all taking on around global agri-food systems transformation. I took lots of notes on each of the different proposed action plans, and I can just tell you from where we sit as FAO, and I know you're going to hear from my colleagues from IFAD and UNDP and others who are a part of the UN system, there is so much that resonates, so much that is directly relevant to the strategic work that we are doing every single day in this building, but not just FAO's headquarters, FAO's global organization. Remember, we are 15,000 people in 140 offices, and so when I hear these 6 regional presentations, all I can think about is how do I help these youth action groups translate these ideas into even more specific and more concrete action for them in the countries of each of these regions. Because when we do that in that regional space, that all then culminates and comes together into what I think we're all trying to do, have real global, serious and sincere and measurable impact. And maybe one thing that I would say to the teams that have worked so diligently on each of these action plans, we struggle with this here internally ourselves as people who have been a part of strategizing as strategic leaders. It's really hard to get really specific. It's really hard to get really granular. I fall into this trap every single day, whether it's an email I'm writing, a briefing note that I'm scripting, talking points for some intervention like this that I'm supposed to come and eloquently or articulately give to each of you. I fall into the trap oftentimes of just sort of depending on very traditional phrases or areas of action. We need more capacity development. We need access to financing. We need to get young people more engaged in career development in food and agriculture. all of those things I fundamentally agree with. I know we need to do that. You know we need to do that. The proposals that were up here on the screen convince us that we need to do that. How do we do that? Whose responsibility is it to do that? Who's going to write step 1, step 2, step 3? Who's going to put the budget costs, the financing, the resource mobilization plan around that? How do we prioritize? Who do we need to get to come in and be a part of this with us? What's your responsibility versus my responsibility versus your responsibility? So all I am going to say to all of us in the room is, I think here at the end of the World Food Forum, I think it's a perfect time to congratulate ourselves, to celebrate everything that we have done together, but we gotta go deeper. We gotta be much more specific, we gotta outline things as concretely as we possibly can, and then we have to hold people accountable. We have to sign up, we have to be involved, we have to delegate, we have to make sure that there are just really, really specific aspects to action. Because I'm just saying, we've got so many competing interests, so many competing priorities, lots of actors, lots of stakeholders, lots of initiatives, which is, again, all wonderful. Please don't misconstrue the message, because the message is that that's incredibly positive in this moment where we have urgent needs and we need to move quickly and we need to act quickly. But if we're going to do it, we've got to prioritize. We've got to really think about how we bring very specific steps to the actions that have been outlined here. And I guess what I just want to say to close is that on behalf of FAO leadership, on behalf of our organization, we stand ready to work with each of these regional groups, the youth leaders from the World Food Forum, to do everything we possibly can to get to that granularity, to get to that level of detail where we really are helping enact and make a difference to these very important plans that have been presented to all of you today. It's what we have to do. There really is no other option, because we can't continue to sit in forum after forum and ultimately keep sort of saying the same things year after year. And there's been so much progress that's been made by the whole team that's been a part of the World Food Forum, and we're so thrilled that so many of you are still here, actively engaged, getting more involved, new people coming every time, broadening the circle, broadening the networks and the communities and the ecosystems of people who are involved. That has to continue to happen. So thank you again to all of you for being part of such, not just this week, because it's far more than this week. It's all of the time that we are spending together, year in, year out, day in, day out, that's really, I think, culminated in what we've seen here today. So thank you again for the opportunity to be with all of you. I look forward to seeing all of you, I hope, before next October 2025. We've got a lot of work to do between now and then. And thank you again to our colleagues who are here to be a part of closing out this session. Really appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Director Bechtel, for your presentation and for your steadfast support of the World Food Forum. So, now that we have launched, we will get into these specifics. We will explore, okay, what does it mean to actually implement the Global Youth Action Plan? So Anna, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this plan came to be here today?
Thank you, David. So I have to take you back to the early stages of the World Food Forum back in 2021, when we launched the Global Action Compendium, which outlines policy priorities under the 4 betters of FAO: better production, better life, better nutrition, and better environment. Then in 2022, our Youth Policy Board worked really hard doing surveys, consultations, analyzing youth manifestos, and transformed this global compendium into a regional compendium in 2022, which outlined 5 policy priorities under each region. And then in 2023, we decided we need to go deeper, just as Beth was saying. And we grabbed one of those policy priorities, which our board felt really confident in, that was very important in the region, again, through surveys, further consultations. They define this, and then for the past 2 years, we've been working on developing the actions that were just presented to you. We've been having so many consultations, so many assemblies, trying to make sure we were able to discuss and talk and hear the perspectives of many youth and people around the globe that were either joining us online or in person. And even throughout this week, our Youth Policy Board has worked so hard to hear out, have more roundtables, have more discussion, working crazy hours so we could consult it as much as possible, and we have been working to draft what was presented today really, really hard. So can I have a round of applause for them again?
Okay, so now to hear some remarks, we have an interactive panel moderated by the wonderful Shreya Venkat of the Youth Policy Board. So Shreya, you're welcome to join us here on stage. And Shreya will be joined by Mr. Hisham Zeni, Lead Technical Specialist and Social Inclusion Cluster Coordinator at IFAD. Over to you. And we'll also be joined by Mr. Bouai Toots, Partnerships Lead in Youth for Climate and Food and Agriculture Focal Point at UNDP. Thank you for joining us.
Testing. Okay, awesome. How are we all feeling today? Can we get a cheer from the audience? Woo! Yes, we need some energy today. I know we're at the end of a really, really long week, but a really exciting week with so many amazing insights, reflections. We just heard from Deputy Director Beth Bechtel some powerful remarks about the power of youth leadership, as well as our incredible, my fellow YPB members sharing the action plans that we've been working so hard to develop. And so I'm so excited to now dive into some reflections from our wonderful panel here, and just wanted to kind of start with some initial thoughts from both of you. Perhaps we could start with you, Bouai, if you'd like to start with just initial reflections about what has been shared by the Youth Policy Board in terms of their global action plan, and where you see this going.
Yeah, thank you. That was incredible. You know, to see young people who've taken the time to deliberate over a series of over 2 years, they said, to get to a point where they're really looking at what are the local issues that youth need to address, especially in food and agriculture, right? So those 6 young people that were representing the 6 regions, you know, are representing 1.8 billion young people, the largest generation in history, right? That is instrumental in the way that we need to be addressing, right? I heard a lot of great localized thematic areas, right? Whether it's honoring indigenous ancestral knowledge, nature-based solutions, food and agricultural waste and loss. So those were some of the themes that really stuck out to me, the localized way in which they were addressing a lot of the issues in their communities, right? And as a Youth for Climate champion, as a Youth for Climate member, we recognize that youth need to be at the forefront of leading a lot of these initiatives around food and agriculture, right? And so as the agriculture lead on the Youth for Climate team at UNDP, you know, we see a lot of young people, the solutions are there. They're working in their communities, right? When I was in grad school, we had a saying where we would oftentimes say, anything about us without us isn't for us, right? And that young people are actively working to address the issues in their communities. The solutions are there. And now for us, in my position that I sit in, is how do we effectively connect the financing that is there? And so, you know, we're proud to say that in the last 2 years since we've started these innovation challenges around food and agriculture, sustainable consumption and production, we've committed roughly 2.5 million USD to youth-led, you know, solutions, very similar to a lot of the issues that were brought up by our 6 Youth Policy Board members today. So incredibly proud, and now, as the Director General also said, it's about the implementation part. How do we get the policy conversations that we're having here to be implemented on the ground, right? And how do we make sure that the 1.8 billion young people are also included in that implementation process?
Well, hello everyone. So Hisham Zehni from IFAD. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here. It's my first World Food Forum. I'm the lead of the youth team and only joined this team a few months ago, so this is all really new, extremely exciting. And you know, I want to congratulate FAO, World Food World Food Forum team and the Youth Policy Board. I mean, what you have done over the last 2 years is really incredible, and bringing everyone here together is really exciting and very stimulating. So for us, it's particularly relevant to be here at this World Food Forum because we at IFAD, well, youth is a top priority for us. It's not just youth in general, it's youth engagement, youth empowerment, youth employment, youth entrepreneurship, particularly in rural areas and in the agri-food and rural sectors. So this is you know, one of the major priorities of the organization, and it's an area in which we have to develop a new action plan. So we've been focusing on youth for several years. We had an action plan that was developed in 2019 and is expiring this year. So we're in the process of developing our new action plan, and my team have been here consulting with many of you over the last few days here, trying to build connections, get insights, and understand what are the challenges, needs, and priorities, because we really want to make sure that we consult as widely as possible. So as some of our speakers said earlier, please do come and knock on our door, and we'll be very happy to let you into the kitchen. We need to make sure that you are really involved in the process of developing our action plan, and we'll be looking to work with you to hold some consultation sessions next year. So coming to the action plans, in a way I was listening to all the speakers, and I thought, wow, if I could just merge all of those action plans into one, we could have our IFAD action plan for rural youth. I mean, it is just, you know, great stuff. And many of the things that you have said resonate very well with our work and what we're finding at IFAD. So financial inclusion is probably the top priority. We hear this all the time from the stakeholders that we engage with. And so I saw that coming out in a couple of the action plans. Digital inclusion obviously is critical, especially for youth nowadays, and combined with that, agricultural technology is fundamental to making agriculture more efficient, making it even more attractive for youth. I think there is an image problem, as some have said, and so that needs to be worked on. The Rural Champion Scheme, I thought that was an amazing idea, and congrats to those that came up with that. And I think that is also very much linked to the point about enhancing the image of agriculture, enhancing the image of life in rural areas. Get the rural champions, get the youth champions, get the youth role models, bring them together, identify them, engage them, and help them bring forward the action that you're looking for. I think in terms of the challenges, my colleagues have been telling me that they've heard a lot about your frustrations with youth tokenism, youth washing, and we fully appreciate that frustration. For us, it's extremely important to be able to empower youth, to have a meaningful voice, to amplify your voices in policy discussions, in decision-making at all levels. And I think here a couple of points I want to share you know, in terms of levels, it's not just about global level. Of course, World Food Forum is a great platform. We have the Biodiversity COP, and I'm sure FAO, IFAD, and others are helping youth to be active in these global processes. We also have regional processes. The Africa Food System Forum was held just a few weeks ago. There was a massive participation of youth there. They came up with the Kigali Declaration, Youth Declaration on Agriculture and Climate, which they're going to take to the Baku COP in a month's time. So it's very important to be engaged at the global, at the regional level, but also national levels, sub-national levels, and grassroots. Here, I think it's extremely important to make sure that, you know, we're being inclusive, bringing together rural youth, the marginalized groups, vulnerable groups, and I heard that coming through most of the presentations earlier on. So I think it's really commendable that you are pushing to be as inclusive as possible, to bring in the more disadvantaged voices to the fore, and then work up the ladder. So we start from the very, very localized, let's say, community-based levels and work up all the way to national, global levels. And this is how we can bring meaningful change. Echoing some of Beth's points, it's very important for you to tell us what you need from us. We know that you want to be part of the decision-making and policy processes. We're there to help you, but we also need you to tell us how you want us to help you. And it's very important for us to hear that. We have different ways of doing this, and we want to know what works best for you within your regions, within your countries, and there are different approaches that will be most effective across the different contexts. So please make sure that you do tell us about that. Thank you.
Thank you to both of you for sharing not just the importance of financial inclusion, of digital inclusion, of these resources that are so critical to shaping youth involvement within the space, but also providing those pathways for opportunity for youth leadership and youth being part of the entire decision-making process of policy development and actionable implementation. So I think that was so powerful in what both of you addressed. Turning it back to you, Boy. Through your work at UNDP at the intersection of food and agriculture, as well as the climate dimension, with multi-stakeholder partnerships and cross-sectoral involvement being really at the core of the work that you do, how can youth leaders and policymakers effectively collaborate to ensure that the actionable items in this plan that was shared today are not only implemented, but also adapted across different sectors?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think partnerships is such a crucial element of working in this ecosystem, right? And I think being in conversation across the different UN agencies around some of these topics is also vital, right? And so in my work, in trying to bring in all of the different stakeholders, whether it's youth who are in those communities, as well as government, as well as private sector, to look at financing, what we oftentimes find is that we really emphasize that, okay, youth need to be at the center of a lot of this. And then the biggest part, you know, the financial bit, right? So making sure that we're not just speaking hope and we're not just here talking all of these big topics, but really putting our mouth where the money is, right? And so being able to commit financially is saying, okay, we are going to directly invest this much in this youth-led area of food and agriculture, for instance, right? And that, I'll go back again, young people have the solutions there. They're not waiting for somebody to save them, they're innovating within their own communities. And so honoring a lot of that local nature-based solutions, right? So some of the projects, for instance, in Uganda, there was one project that we funded last year called Shareland, this incredibly creative way of finding smallholder farmers who couldn't afford to have their own big hectares of land, but then there were other farmers in their communities who had abundance of land. And so a young person came up with an application where you could connect farmers who didn't have enough land but had ambition to farm more with other farmers who had access land, right? And that was kind of a simple thing that brought in a digital tool. So finding a lot of those types of solutions and then funding them, right? And so partnerships for me always comes down to making sure that we know you can't do that alone, right? There's one story that I oftentimes reflect when I think about my partnerships model and mentality. It was when I was in the US, one of the first presidents that I was really excited about voting for. When he came into office, Oprah Winfrey was gonna have him on her show. And Oprah says, I'm gonna ask this guy a question that has oftentimes been asked in underrepresented communities when a new child is born. I'm gonna ask him, are you the one? Are you the one who's gonna save us, who's gonna fix everything, who's gonna make everything right? And Oprah says, you know, there's two ways you can answer a question like that. You can answer it really confident. You can say, yes, I'm that guy, I'm gonna make it happen all by myself. Or you could be really shy and timid and take a step back. It's too big of a job. There's no way I can handle that or get it done. And she said he came on the show, he answered it the best way he possibly could have. He said, I'm one of many. And that it takes all of us and all of these different organizations and all of our positions to make sure that we are centering youth voices, right? It's not for the tokenization piece, it really is for our collective well-being and for future generations, right? And so we see these big forums happening. The UN General Assembly just ended in New York, where the Declaration on Future Generations was signed, right? And so there is a lot of this discussion happening. And now where we start to come in is to say, let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's just not talk at these forums. Let's actually inject the financing to the local levels.
Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for that. Thank you so much, and really showcasing that we are one of many, and it's important for all of us to work together to ensure that these actions are implemented. I'd like to turn it now over to you, Hisham, to talk about your work as the Youth and Social Inclusion Cluster Coordinator at IFAD, where inclusivity of youth is at the heart of the work that you do. And so, same question, really understanding where does youth leadership lie within policymaking and how can we adapt that to local context? So we'd love to hear your insights on that.
So I think the most important thing for youth to be effective in policy dialogue is building alliances. You spoke about partnerships, so I mean it's very similar, but I mean it's not just partnerships, it's building actual connections, coming around common goals and objectives, and doing so in a very inclusive and multi-stakeholder fashion. So I'll give you the example of financial inclusion, for instance. I mean, we try to organize a lot of consultations, and I'm not just IFAD, I mean, all of us here, all the actors here and outside the room. Now, I haven't seen that many consultations where we have, as a stakeholder, representatives from the financial sector being there. We have maybe people from government or farmer organizations. In a sense, it's kind of the usual people that, almost preaching to the converted. But building alliances with those that we really need to bring in to support us in the journey to enhancing opportunities for youth is really essential. So I would say multi-stakeholder partnerships, we've heard those in the action plans. Try to make sure you do a very, very careful stakeholder mapping that identifies all the key actors that you need to have on your side and to be convinced, who maybe even you need to convince they're not actually supporting you right now, but who need to be brought on board and be part of that coalition. If you have that coalition built on solid, strong foundations, a broad coalition, you will be much more effective in bringing about changes that are needed, in going to governments and saying, this is what we need from your next agricultural development policy or national development strategy. Be very clear through the consultations and insights you gain through the consultations with the various stakeholders that you engage with, be very clear on what you need, specifically what you need from the governments. Is it subsidies? Is it new credit schemes, tax incentives, other types of incentives? Be very clear on what is needed. And when we think about agri-food systems and the economics of it, it doesn't just end there. It's also about, and I come back to the image issue, it's about broadening that spectrum of partners so that you bring in others who are also key actors in investing in rural areas, so that we can make rural areas also places that are fun and enjoyable and where people want to go and live. And it's not just for business, for employment, for entrepreneurship, but where they want to settle, they want to live their life, build their families and so on. So that's really what I think. Alliances, coalitions, partnerships, essential.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Everyone, big round of applause for both of our speakers today. Alliances, partnerships, really understanding that change agents at all levels are absolutely instrumental to incorporate into not just our global action plan that we talked about today, but all action plans going forward. So can we have one more round of applause for all of our speakers? And thank you all for being here today. Very excited to continue these conversations even after flagship. And I'd now like to pass it back to Anna.
Thank you so much, Shreya, and a big round of applause for our panelists again.
So, as we wrap up today, we encourage everybody to take a closer look at the Global Youth Action Plan. It's a roadmap for creating real change. Dive in, see how you can contribute, discuss the partnerships that we've just heard about, and don't forget that if you want to join this incredible team of changemakers, applications will open very, very soon. This is your chance to be at the forefront of shaping the future of our agri-food systems.
We invite all of you to join us at the youth booth in the atrium to further dive into and discuss the Global Youth Action Plan. We invite you all, as we've said multiple times before, to get in the kitchen with us and carry these action plans together. Thank you to all our speakers, panelists, and participants, both here and online. Your energies and ideas is what make this movement possible. Let's keep the momentum going, stay connected, follow the World Food Forum for updates, and continue pushing for a sustainable future.
Thank you again, everyone. Stay inspired, stay engaged, and take action. We look forward to seeing what we can achieve together. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Recording stop.